2012 is when we did our first purchase. I think 2011 is when we started, attending meetings. Probably 2010 is when I started listening to podcasts. My husband was a little ahead of me, so he was probably, late 2009 or late 2010. And, we just obsessively listened to, I think you were on episode 300 at that time, though.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 1322. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it is Veterans Day, the day we honor our military veterans, not to be confused with Memorial Day, different concepts, of course. It is really something, when you consider the bravery, the sacrifice people have made for their country. Of course, we're talking about the United States here, but we have listeners in 189 countries around the world. Sure, all countries share similar stories in terms of having veterans and so forth. So thank you so much for your service. We're going to share a couple of quotes about Veterans Day in a moment, talk about the Berlin Wall. Adam is here with me. He's got a story to share. We're going to talk about near-death experience and then go to our guest where we'll talk about new mortgage models. And I know you're all wondering, what the heck does a near-death experience have to do with real estate investing, mortgage models, etc.? You'll see. Adam, welcome back.
Thanks. It's good to talk to you.
Good to have you back. So Veterans Day, this is something we do every November 11th. I remember on one Veterans Day years ago, I happened to be in Pearl Harbor on that day, saw the acknowledgement of Veterans Day there. I'm looking at like a list of quotes about Veterans Day, and one from Nathan Hale in 1776. I mean, think about the state of mind some of our veterans had to have over the years. And of course, this was spoken long before Veterans Day existed, which came into being after World War I, which was, a tragic war, obviously. But in 1776, Nathan Hale said, "I only regret that I have but one life to give for my country." Can you imagine the kind of dedication that our founders and the thinking that must have been going on way back long before Veterans Day existed, of course, at the founding of the United States. But yeah, just something.
Yeah, and it's especially, we're going to talk about, the technology of mortgages later, but I like the fact that our veterans nowadays, the technology is keeping them safer and safer. We've got, thankfully, a lot of the veterans now, we're able to do a whole lot more without deploying hundreds of thousands of troops into the areas that we're going into. So I'd like to thank everybody for their service, and glad that a lot of them, not all of them obviously, but a lot of them are safer now.
If you haven't checked it out, we have a lot of clients that are ex-military, and make sure you check out our Heroic Investing show, where we really address investing needs of first responders and military, all in one show that's kind of geared toward that specifically. But again, not as comprehensive as this show by any means, but we do profile some of the military and first responder people on that show, on the Heroic Investing show. So check that out, of our many, many shows.
Yeah, and Gary Pinkerton, who co-hosts that with you, he delves a lot into the transitioning from the active duty to, investor or business owner or whatever, the transitioning out of the military. So he deals a lot with that on the show.
And, having done it himself, moving from Navy submarine captain to civilian, he has been, diligently working on that for several years now. Another great quote, and this is from Reagan, and then this is a good segue to talk about the Berlin Wall, which fell 30 years ago, 30 years and 2 days ago, I guess. Veterans know better than anyone else the price of freedom, for they've suffered the scars of war. We can offer them no better tribute than to protect what they have won for us. And I credit Reagan with ending the Cold War, with the fall of the Berlin Wall. His famous speech was 2 years before the Berlin Wall fell, when he said, "Secretary Gorbachev, tear down this wall," right? And that's a super famous speech. And I've been to Berlin, I think, 3 times now. And I remember the first time I was there in the I guess it was 1994. And I spent about 6 hours at Checkpoint Charlie. And let me tell you something, that was a moving experience. Checkpoint Charlie was, I guess, the main or one of the main entrances and exits from East to West Berlin, and there's now a museum there. And you just see, Adam, all of these incredible feats people went to try and escape communism. The Berlin Wall was put up on a weekend. It was basically put up over a weekend. It was, of course, a surprise. East Berlin was suffering this massive brain drain as all of the smart people were smart enough to get the heck out of there. And the Soviets decided, we can't have this. We got to stop the brain drain. So we're going to station soldiers all around East Berlin and encircle the entire region. And they did that on a weekend, and they built the first version of the wall on a weekend. If you can, it's just amazing. And so suddenly people woke up to find that they were trapped. They were now prisoners in East Berlin. Tears came to my eyes several times when I was at Checkpoint Charlie looking at the exhibits and seeing the kind of ways people tried to escape. They tried to tunnel under. They tried to fly over. They tried to just hop the fence and run through the middle area where they were machine gunned down or guard dogs attacked them and they were either killed or imprisoned. They tried to invent elaborate ways to hide inside of cars to be smuggled out. It's just really unbelievable. You think the disgusting communists would get the message, hey, maybe we're doing something wrong if everybody's trying to leave. It's just something. It's unbelievable.
The solutions that people come up with sometimes really make you wonder who thought this was the best option.
Yeah. No question about it. Reagan in 1987, he said, and he stood at the Brandenburg Gate, right at the Berlin Wall, basically behind him. I believe it was right behind the Brandenburg Gate. I've been there a few times. I just can't remember exactly. But he said, "General Secretary Gorbachev, if you seek peace, if you seek prosperity for the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, if you seek liberalization, come here to this gate, Mr. Gorbachev. Open this gate, Mr. Gorbachev. Tear down this wall." Very powerful words. Many in Reagan's cabinet said that he should not say that. It was too inflammatory. And 2 years later, thankfully, the wall came down. But one other really interesting thing about this is that someone on my Facebook, and you probably saw this woman that used to work for me who is just off her rocker, starts comparing it to a border wall. That Trump wants to put up, right? As if it's the same thing. I had to educate her and I said, you do realize that a wall around a country is meant to keep people from illegally entering is different from a wall that is a prison to keep people from leaving. Just, amazing to me, but this is what you get in the brainwashing we have today.
Yeah, and I don't think our border wall is going to be doing the things that they were doing to people fleeing the country.
No, certainly not.
Definitely not doing that.
Certainly not. And that's coming from you, who's definitely not a Trump fan. So I'm glad you have a balanced view of that. It's really something, these historical events. I remember the second time I was in Berlin, I went on a tour, and this tour guide, it absolutely shocked me. This young guy, obviously very liberal, all he could talk about is Kennedy's speech in the 60s. And I believe Kennedy also spoke at the Brandenburg Gate, but anyway, he spoke right at the wall. And, he said, I too am a Berliner, basically. He said it in Germany. That's all he could talk about, this tour guide that toured us around for hours. And he never mentioned Reagan. I mean, how you can just gloss over the guy who actually...
Yeah, the president when it actually came down.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely shocking to me how revisionist our history is. It's absolutely, absolutely shocking. Okay, so veterans, thank you for your service. Be careful of the economic Berlin walls, as I've mentioned many times. California is making every attempt to build an economic Berlin Wall because there's capital flight. Okay, we're definitely seeing that. There's no question. Over the last maybe decade and a half, I've certainly noticed the California economic Berlin Wall as they've made it harder for people to move assets out of that state. They've made it harder for people to leave. I assume every high tax jurisdiction that is losing population is doing this. I assume New York is doing the same thing. I don't know enough about it. But be careful of economic Berlin walls. That's the only other point I want to give you. Now, Adam, let's switch gears and talk about you do a good job of due diligence. And you recently did some due diligence on a property you're looking to buy. And tell us about that.
So I want to remind everybody that the pro formas that are up on our website are best guesses. We do our best to give you the best and most accurate information, but it's not always 100%, dead on, down to the penny. But recently I was looking at a property, and I'll just tell you now, it was in York. We were thinking, hey, this has some really good numbers, but the one number that you will find that fluctuates more than any other number is going to be your property taxes. Because the market specialists, they post it based on, for the most part, what they're paying in property tax, which is fair because that's what it currently is, and they don't know what it will exactly come to whenever you purchase it, if there's any reassessment. So I checked and I said, okay, this property tax was around $1,000 or $1,100 a year. So I called the York appraisal office and talked to them for a little bit, and I said, if it were taxed at $95,000, which is what the house was, how much more would my property taxes be? And they told me it would be $4,000 a year more. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's no way this property could cash flow if it was that much. What's going on? How can this be solved? So I called the tax assessor's office, the tax collector, and said, hey, what's going on with your property taxes? Why is it so low now and it's going to be higher? And we had a conversation, and I realized kind of what
I have a question for you before you go on. I'm curious. How long did it take you to get through and get the answers to your questions by calling the tax assessor?
Absolutely no time. The lady at the switchboard sent me straight to him, and he answered. It was incredible.
Oh, wow. That's great. Yeah, okay.
So I talked to him for a few minutes, and then I talked to
Now you're saying you talked to him, but,
I just asked him some general questions about how property taxes were done in that area. He explained it to me, and I thought, well, this seems kind of odd because, this seems, the way he said it, that the jump could happen at any time. So then I thought, we should talk to our market specialist about this, because if this is true, then all of their properties might be, really off. Then Sarah and Carrie and I spoke to the market specialist, and they said, well, this is what we think, but here's our real estate attorney who knows everything about property taxes. Feel free to speak to him about it. So he sent us a very detailed email that explained how property taxes are assessed, and if your valuation goes up, how they will safely raise it. Because as you know, if that went up $400 for investors, that goes up $400 a month for everybody. So it turns out there's actually a protection in place. But this is what the main point of this is, that we are here to help. And if a situation like this arises, we're here to explain it for you, because this property looked amazing at first, then it looked terrible, and now it still looks pretty amazing. It's something that you have to do your due diligence, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if you get some bad news at first.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that it's better than it looked on the surface, right?
Yes.
You saw the pro forma, and of course the pro forma is just an estimate and a projection, right? It hasn't happened yet, so it's not reality. You got to do your own due diligence. We always say that. So you saw the pro forma, then you called the tax assessor, and at first you were very discouraged.
Oh, yes,
because
absolutely.
you thought the taxes were going to increase by 5 times.
Yeah,
right?
the property taxes looked like it was going to turn the cash flow negative on the property.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
due diligence is important, but then once you get your due diligence, it is important to ask questions of your due diligence to figure out if that will actually happen.
Great. So the net is what?
The net is that as you're doing your due diligence, if you have any questions at all about it, we're here for you. We have our market specialists here for you, and even they have professionals for you there. So if you have any questions along the way in your due diligence, don't be discouraged. We can help you sort everything out because we want you to do all the due diligence you can. We want you to have as much information, and you should have as much information as possible going into the deal. But even as you've figured it out, like as I was looking at it, I am not a tax professional. So when I looked at it, I thought, oh my gosh, throw my hands up, run away from this entire market. Who knows what's going to happen? But we can help you get in contact with professionals who won't charge you thousands of dollars to talk to them.
Okay, good. And when you say tax professional, of course, there are many types of taxes, so, as we all know. And here we're just talking about property taxes, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so near-death experience, and let's get to our guest. This is, when I saw this article and posted it in our content group, of course, the Venture Alliance members have access to the content group. I guess it intrigued you as much as it did me, right, Adam?
Yeah. I mean, it's a headline you have to click on.
Oh, I mean, it's good. This is good. Now, most criminals are stupid. If they were smart, they'd earn their money honestly, right? But some are really quite brilliant. And this guy was pretty brilliant. He's serving a life sentence, okay? Lock him up and throw away the key, right? But 4 years ago, he had a near-death experience when his heart stopped beating. And Adam, what did he do then?
Well, he was resuscitated, and so he figured, well, at one point I was dead, so why not take a shot? Why not tell him, hey, I served my life? It's kind of like Game of Thrones whenever, spoiler alert, Jon Snow comes back from the dead and says his watch has ended. This guy figured, hey, maybe my watch has ended too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for him...
Yeah. So his claim, he petitioned 2 courts, I guess, right, to say that he already died, so he served his life sentence. I mean, think about the rationale here. It's actually pretty good. I got to give this guy some credit. This is the problem with our legal system, by the way. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about true and false. It's about, wrangling and BS and, all sorts of just stuff that is unrelated. It's like the disgusting scumbag lawyers out there who really don't care about the truth, of course. They just care about winning at all costs. They will do whatever they can to malign and obscure the truth and everything. And, hopefully there's a good place in hell for those people because they're disgusting. And, that's in civil or criminal law. They have them everywhere, right? Hopefully any lawyers that we have listening are not those people. You're more principled than that, I hope. But you got to give this guy some credit, right?
Yeah. And you have to give the court credit for the way
the answer.
their answer.
Right.
I want to read y'all the quote from the ruling by the appeals court. They said the man's name is Schreiber. They said Schreiber is either still alive, in which case he must remain in prison, or he is actually dead, in which case this appeal is moot.
Yeah. So in other words, the judge said, look, if you're alive, you got to finish your sentence. If you're dead, none of us are really here anyway, and this isn't happening. So take your pick, right?
One of the two is true. Which one do you want to be true?
That is great. That is great. Good story. All right, Adam. Hey, let's get to our guest. Go to jasonhartman.com, check out properties. And by the way, when I was at that mastermind meeting all week last week in Sarasota, people, very sophisticated people in that audience, wealthy people, amazingly, just some of the very basic stuff they don't understand about income property investing is it's scary, but it's also easy to fix. On the front page of jasonhartman.com is a great video you must watch. It is free, and you should watch it every 6 months or so on how to analyze a real estate deal. Just keep yourself on track. I hear you guys coming to us saying, well, what about this? What about that? And I can tell that you got to go back to the fundamentals sometimes and just look at that pro forma and constantly remind yourself how to analyze it. With that, Adam, you ready for the guest?
Let's do it.
Okay, this is what I promised last week when we ran out of time, talking about new mortgage models with our guest, Patrick. It's my pleasure to welcome Patrick Boyaggi to the show. He is co-founder and CEO of Own Up. They are a unique spin on mortgage sourcing, and I think you'll like what he has to say. Patrick, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, Jason. Thanks for having me.
Good, and you're coming to us from Boston, right?
Yep.
Great. So the mortgage business is a complicated one. It's fragmented. A lot of people getting ripped off and overcharged. I've owned a couple of mortgage companies over the years. That was a long time ago. It's kind of a crazy business. Everyone hates the process, but boy, those loans can be a great asset in building a real estate investment portfolio, that's for sure. So we'll talk a little bit about what you do, which is really kind of unique. But first, I thought I'd ask you, what are your thoughts on mortgage rates? I can't believe how low they are. Can you?
It's remarkable what's happened in the industry over the last 8 to 10 years. When we hit all-time historic lows after the financial crisis, everybody believed that we would never get anywhere close to it. And here we are in 2019, and interest rates for single-family primary mortgages are in the low threes again. So it is really quite remarkable, and should be a real boon to property owners.
Yeah, and remarkable might be an understatement because the deals are phenomenal. I mean, it really is. Do you think the rates are going to stay low like this? I mean, ultimately, like when you look at the macro picture, not, what's the bond market doing tomorrow or next month or whatever, but over the next few years, I mean, we got an election year coming up, so that interacts with the economy and rates and such, but I just can't imagine if we have this conversation for 3, 4, 5 years from now that rates are going to be this low. But I've been wrong about interest rates many times. What do you think?
My canned response to this question, and I get it often, is that if I could predict the outcome of interest rates, then I certainly wouldn't be doing this job.
Right.
I would be, predicting them as I run a hedge fund atop some skyscraper in Boston. But with all of that said, your question is a longer term one. I'll start with sort of the near term, which is, the obvious point. The market is anticipating that the Fed is going to drop short-term interest rates yet again. So I anticipate for the rest of this year that, we're going to have interest rates at these low levels. When I think about the future of the economy, we have really low unemployment. And so people are back to work, or they have the ability to go back to work for the most part. And we haven't seen a rise in inflation yet. So until we encounter a situation where, inflation becomes an issue to the economy, I think that the Fed is going to continue to try and keep low rates to stimulate the economy. Now, we've had a bull market for the last 10 plus years. So I think the interest rate curve is inverse right now. So it's anticipating that there's a recession in the near term. The thing is, the Fed uses interest rates to try and stimulate the economy. And if there's not much room for them to lower rates, I'm not sure what they're going to do. So I think the historical average, and you probably know this better than me, Jason, is somewhere in the sixes for mortgage rates.
Listeners, think about what Patrick just said. That's almost double what it is now. Double. Okay. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. It's, for real estate investors, your buying power is as great as it may be. Yeah. There's just not much more room to have any more leverage.
Well, maybe we really will see real negative interest rates. I would argue that versus real inflation, we are now in a negative interest rate environment, almost for sure. Versus the official inflation rate, no, but the real inflation rate, yes. So, you're borrowing below the cost of inflation, which means you're getting paid to borrow. So it's pretty phenomenal.
And for your listeners, Jason, who are sophisticated real estate investors, they're fully aware of the tax advantages, albeit, there's some limitation now with the recent tax change. But, a lot of our customers are first-time homebuyers, and they're not even fully aware of the tax benefits associated with, the mortgage interest deduction and factoring in, what sort of impact that has on home ownership. So, yeah, I think we're all on the same page that this is a great time. Home values I've certainly appreciated in certain markets. For a while there, it was getting a little crazy. I think it's come down. There's some markets where it still might be like that, but there are definitely a lot of wonderful buying opportunities. And for those that are using financial leverage and securing a mortgage to do it, you're getting, near historic low rates. And you never buy a stock at the absolute low and sell at the absolute high. So the fact that you're near this all-time low suggests that from a financing perspective, that, there's some real advantages to it.
One of the things that is really interesting about your company, by the way, how old is the company?
We formed the company at the beginning of 2016, so coming up on our fourth year.
Okay, so in internet years, you've been in business like 50 years. Just kidding. I mean, it's so funny. Every company nowadays is so new. We're in a very vibrant startup culture. It's quite interesting. One of the things that I just don't know how you do this. I'd love for you to share it with the listeners, how you pull this one off. But when someone goes to your website to apply for a mortgage, they don't get a real hit on their credit, a hard inquiry. They get only a soft inquiry. Can you explain the difference between what that is? And then I'd love to know how you do that.
Yeah, so as you alluded to, we collect your information in as little as 5 minutes, no social security number, no hard credit inquiry. And the way we like to think about it is this is the most efficient and least invasive way for you to begin the home financing experience. And what we do is we leverage products offered by the credit bureaus that allow us to do a soft credit inquiry with your first name, last name, and home address. And we get, close to 95, 97% of our customers are able to work through that. Some of them we need to follow up with maybe a date of birth and a driver's license number. But, one of the most important things for companies in this world of data security is, to protect yourself and your customers. The best way to do it is to just not have the information that people could be out looking to steal, and Social Security being one of the most important ones.
Well, I'll tell you, as many times now, I was going to say multiple times, but I have had incidents, just way too many, of identity theft. And it is such a hassle. It is just a monumental hassle. And I want to tell all our listeners, never give anyone your Social Security number. Never give a credit card number over the phone. I cannot believe still the number of businesses that think you're just going to tell someone your credit card number. I mean, that's crazy. And the fact that in the U.S., we're still giving waiters our credit card and they leave the table, unlike the way they do it in Europe, where they bring the machine to the table. It really all needs to change to like Apple Pay and Google Pay type concept. But in the meantime, it's just crazy the way we're all so lax about credit card security.
Yeah, and listen, Jason, quite frankly, every lender in America has the capacity to use products like this. I'd love to say that we're the only ones and that we've built this unique technology. We were just leveraging the products that exist and are offered by the credit bureaus. We just have a belief that we should put the customer's interest above all else. And, what happens too often with traditional mortgage lenders is they collect your Social Security number, they collect all of your information, they do hard credit inquiries, ultimately because they're trying to prevent you from shopping. I mean, that is their main motivation, if you think about it, because they only have the products that they have available to offer to you. They don't want you to find out that there are other lenders out there that have lower expense models and therefore can offer lower rates or may have different products or different programs that ultimately can lead to a better financial outcome for you. And as a result, we've said, we are going to do what's best for the consumer for them to optimize their home financing experience. So collect their information in the most efficient, least invasive manner. Don't do any hard credit inquiries. Don't require a social security number. And effectively, flip the broker screen so that you get access to perfect information so that you can do what's in your best interest. And, we work with a network of lenders that can solve for virtually every loan scenario, and we've pre-negotiated terms with all of them. But most importantly, we allow you to shop in complete anonymity. So we never share your information with any of our lenders until you opt in and you say that's a lender and their offer is the one that I want to choose and move forward with. Only at that time will you connect with that lender and will they have access to your information. And for us, we just believe that in every walk of life, you're able to do something like this. When you want to go shop for a car, you're able to figure out what the dealers in your area are selling those cars for without having to, go and do that silly negotiation with the salesperson. And you should have that same ability afforded to you in what's likely the biggest.
The market's got to become a lot less opaque. And so I like the fact that, it is becoming that way with services like yours. Okay, so basically they get this information. It's a soft inquiry on their credit report. And what does that mean to them? If you get a lot of hard inquiries, it looks like you're out shopping and you're asking for credit, but it's being denied, right? And so that lowers your score. Does the soft inquiry do anything?
No, there's no impact to your credit whatsoever. And what's important, so it is very similar to what would happen if you used a service like Credit Karma and they use a soft credit inquiry. Now, what's a very important distinction for us is that the credit models we use are the exact same ones that are used by all mortgage lenders. And this is important because what that allows us to do is get the score that is used by your mortgage lender to price your loan. Because there are a million different credit models. And if you're not using the one that is used throughout the mortgage industry and the one that Fannie and Freddie require, then that can be very misleading in terms of, the price we're able to get. So what happens is we get the exact same credit score that every mortgage lender would use, and we see all of the same trade lines. So given your credit score, we can price your loan accordingly. Given all of your trade lines, we can calculate your debt to income properly. And then based off of either the property value of your existing home, if you're refinancing, or the purchase price, we'll use that as the estimated value to be able to calculate the loan to value ratio, which is effectively all of the criteria that's used to evaluate what rate and what products are best and most suitable for your very specific situation.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else you want people to know?
No, I think this was a great opportunity to talk a little bit about the industry and to share a little bit about us. Our business is a purpose-driven organization. It was started with a mission to ensure that every American gets a fair deal on their mortgage. And we've built innovative technology. We've built a network of vetted retail lenders, banks, credit unions, and mortgage companies that agree to operate in full transparency. And we provide consumers with access to the information they need to create the best financial outcome for themselves and not for the lender. And we found that our customers found that to be really refreshing, and it's a source of pride for us. And yeah, it's been a real pleasure to be on and get the chance to tell your listeners more about us.
Excellent. And the website is ownup.com. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Jason, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.